Grade 11, this is psychology chapter 16, and we're talking about gender roles. Gender roles means the roles that are attributed to each of the persons according to their sex. So basically, when we talk about gender, we mean to talk about sex. So it refers to the gender refers to the sex of an individual, either male or female. The gender roles, they are closely related to the concept of the gender is the idea of the gender role. It's the widely accepted societal expectation about how the males and females should behave. The gender rules used to enable us to identify whether a person in our society is a male or female. Gender rules also define appropriate and normal masculine and feminine behavior in a particular culture. Unlike gender itself, gender roles are not genetically determined. But notice that we keep on saying role. So this means that it's like playing a role. So psychologists are careful to distinguish two ways in which gender roles function. When we observe and describe differences between boys and girls or men and women, we're using gender roles descriptively. For example, we say men are like this, or boys will be boys. And then we say, oh, she's crying because she's a woman. These are societal expectations of the different genders. And this is what we call stereotypes. Stereotypes are fixed and oversimplified beliefs about the ways in which men and women are supposed to behave. Many gender stereotypes, especially in the United States, are linked to the traditional views of men as breadwinners and women as homemakers. This, of course, seems like a 1920 definition, because if you have noticed, these gender roles and the talking about gender roles, it is supposed to end at a point. But we're going to take it to the end. Gender stereotypes are widespread in all societies. For example, in their survey of 30 countries, John Williams and Deborah Best, they found that men are more likely to be judged to be wise, courageous, aggressive, dominant, arrogant, and unemotional. Women are more likely to be seen as dependent, submissive, weak, emotional, foolish, and sensitive. Even emotions, in this case, are giving gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes have tended to keep women in the houses. Women, of course, bear children, but they also are traditionally accepted to have further primary responsibility for raising the children, to naturally be good at child care, and to enjoy it. On the other hand, popular humor makes fun of men's presumed incompetence in raising children and maintaining a clean, neat house. So, we're going to start talking about the physical and the cognitive differences between men and women. Of course, physical differences, they are very apparent because there are females and there are males, and they are physically and sexually different from each other. Now we're going to talk now about the cognitive differences. At a point, it was once believed that men were more intelligent than women because men had greater knowledge of world affairs and skill in science and industry. Although most men could demonstrate greater knowledge and skills in these areas, this ability did not reflect differences in intelligence. Rather, these differences arose from the exclusion of women from the world affairs, science, and industry. But as women invaded the world and as women were given the chance to learn and were given the equal chances as men, we started noticing that girls seem to acquire language somewhat faster than boys. On the other hand, men seem to be somewhat superior in the ability to manipulate visual images held in memory and visual spatial abilities of the sort used in mathematics, science, and even map reading. In the past, boys regularly surpassed girls in measured computational abilities, but in 2008, review of the research found that this difference has virtually disappeared. Studies still find that males excel in mathematical problem solving in high school and college, and boys generally outperform girls on the mathematics section of the SAT. So here let's explain the general differences. In most cases, the differences are small, and they appear to be getting smaller as more women pursue coursework in a wide range of fields. More girls are excelling in mathematics and science and pursuing careers in fields previously dominated by men, such as architecture and medicine. These gender differences are group differences. There is greater variation in these skills between individuals within the groups than between the groups. Some differences may reflect cultural influences. For example, spatial and mathematical abilities may be stereotypically masculine. However, women who are given just a few hours of training in spatial skills, for example, rotating geometric figures or studying floor plans, perform at least as well as men on tests of these skills. Women now, of course, they obtain most of the bachelor's degrees in biology, nearly half of the degrees in chemistry and math. They also gain in computer science, engineering. These trends contradict the stereotype. For women, for example, they tend to exceed men in trust and nurturance or affectionate care. Men tend to exceed women in such traits as assertiveness and tough-mindedness. Other gender differences in personality and behavior include differences in communication styles, level of aggression, and traits desired in a mate. Let's talk about the communication styles. A common masculine stereotype is that of the strong silent type. While many people believe that women talk more than men do, research suggests that the opposite is actually true. Girls do tend to be more talkative than boys during early childhood. By the time they enter school, boys usually dominate the classroom discussions. Indeed, as girls mature, they do less of the talking in most mixed-sex groups. By adulthood, men generally spend more time talking than women do in many situations. Men are also more likely to introduce new topics and interrupt others. Whether these gender differences in communication styles are biologically based or socially learned is still unclear. Male and female children tend to be treated differently from birth in both the number and nature of verbal and nonverbal communications directed towards them. Aggression. In most cultures, it is primarily the men who fight in wars and compete in sports and games. That is in part because men tend to be physically larger and stronger than women, as previously mentioned, of course. Aggression includes hostile or threatening verbal actions such as challenges, threats, boasts, and demands. Physical actions such as grabbing or destroying someone's property, and actual physical attacks such as hitting and shoving. Most psychological studies of aggression have found that men tend to be more aggressive than women, particularly if provoked, but they are also more likely to use physical forms of aggression. Although it is clear that men tend to be more aggressive than women, the origins of this gender difference are not as clear. Some experts believe that gender differences and aggression are primarily due to biological differences between men and women. Male selection. Many physical features such as cleanliness, good complexion, clear eyes, strong teeth, healthy hair, firm muscle tone, and steady gait are found to be universally appealing to both genders. However, studies on mate selection find that men tend to be more swayed than women by a partner's physical appearance. So, in the selection of a mate, both men and women, they are always looking for a good-looking person, a clean person, an organized person, an outspoken person. They found that women are more willing than men to marry someone who was not good-looking, but were less willing to marry someone who was unlikely to hold a steady job. Women also tended to place greater emphasis than men on character traits such as dependability, kindness, and fondness for children. Some psychologists believe that men and women originally valued different characteristics in potential mate because they are the traits that help ensure successful reproduction. However, this explanation cannot be proved conclusively. Gender differences in socialization may also influence which traits men and women look for in a mate. Regardless of the cause, however, the difference between the sexes in the traits considered important in a mate are real and can be found in many different cultures.